Welcome to another episode of Money for Nothing, the podcast about music and capitalism. I'm here with Sam, I'm Saxon, all the usual suspects. I guess just you and I. Anyways, so today we're going to be talking tariffs. You know, everybody's talking tariffs, but like, who's really talking tariffs when it comes to the music industry? Well, we are. And before we jump into that, though, Sam, what do you feel about Bruno Mars being the most popular artist in music for the last 10 years? Apparently, he hasn't come out with an album in almost 10 years, and yet he's also just breaking records, apparently, in streaming. He dropped a few singles, and he became the first artist to reach 150 million monthly listeners on Spotify, and apparently has something like 17 of his songs are over a billion. You know, we've talked about Drake and stuff like that, but I mean, really, come on, like, it's Bruno's world, right? Because this is what people really want to know.
I mean, like, yeah, I mean, so, like, Bruno Mars is, like,
he's like the David Bowie of, like this horrible era of fake news pop music.
No, that's the thing, is that he's not. And that's wrong. The thing is that is wrong, and it's because, once again, and this is a funny part of this, like, of our contemporary moment, I feel like, which is that, like, he's actually... No, that's the thing about Bruno Mars, is that, like, he's a really old school talent.
Yeah, facts.
Like,
and people
it's like
he's... It works, rather. It
yeah,
works
no,
because
he could... Well, no, that's the thing. It works still. It turns out that if you can sing, dance, act a little bit, write your own songs, and you work incredibly hard, and you're a good pop songwriter and singer, like, that's still an effective route to stardom. I mean, like, he's just out there. I mean, just out there, like, writing solid pop songs and recording and releasing them at, like,
right, with probably like a slew of other people, but nonetheless, like, you know, that's always been the case. But yeah, he's just kind of like, and he's also kind of like varied. Like, it was like he did some track with what's her name?
Die with a Smile On or something like that. Yeah, no, that track is terrible.
No, it was like Juicy. It was called like Juicy
Oh,
Wet.
that is the worst track. I mean, that's the other thing about Bruno Mars that surprises me about what you're saying, is that, like, I'm actually a pretty big 24 Karat fan. I think that's a fantastic record. Like, as a record, I think that, like, had he slapped, like, a little bit of, like, reverb and, like, fake tape analog, if he had, like, bounced it to tape and bounced it back, right, like, that would have, and hadn't sold a quadrillion copies, that would have been Pitchfork's album of the year, Oven Pop Auteur. Like,
okay, do the remix. You hear it first. Let's hear
you know
that.
what I mean? Like it was just it's a really good album. And then, you know, Silk Sonic was okay. The last couple tracks, I mean, it does feel to me like his more recent hits have been in that, like, late Drake. They're less good. They're like, you can, or
people
like,
still love it, and it's like, and he's like not drop. He's like, what's the use of an album? I'm just gonna drop.
Oh yeah, he's just dropping singles.
Billion,
or it's like Maroon 5. How Maroon 5 had, like, hits 5 to 7 years after, by all rights, they should have, and it was just like will to power. It was just a refusal to stop having hits.
Yeah, but I think it's also the thing that we always talk about on here, you know, which is the fact that, like, time stopped, and people are like, there's so much music and so much, like, it's like so diluted. Music is, like, so diluted right now that they're just like, oh, that guy I listened to in my, like, late high school, early college years, like, something familiar.
and that if you're in, right, which Bruno Mars definitely is, and, like, you have all the industry connects you need, like, the glide path to Bruno Mars and Lady Gaga, like, having a number one hit piano ballad is like it's like there are strings that can be pulled to give that song a fighting chance, and by gosh, they were pulled.
It's what one may say is a recession-proof pop hit, whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but
anyways,
the continuing to have that kind of plays. I mean, the other thing about Bruno Mars is that he's a little bit, honestly, like in my mind, like he there's that song "Close to Heaven" where he like completely rips off the Police. I do feel like he's a little bit stingy in a deep way, in that like the Police have like a whole bunch of songs, all of which like kind of sound both completely the same and like quite different. You know what I mean? And can just like appear anywhere on like AM or FM radio, and you'd be like, oh, this is like kind of a rock song and kind of a reggae song and kind of a pop song. And he's like, these songs are like kind of R&B songs and kind of rap songs and kind of pop songs, and they all sound like sort of the same and sort of totally different. And like as a result, like there's a lot of, he's got like a diversified hit portfolio. It's like if a certain style of song goes out of favor, it's like it's okay. He's got the piano ballad one and the funk one, in addition to whatever the Locked Out of Heaven is. I have no idea what genre that would even be.
Okay, that's like probably like 6 minutes in which the only 6 minutes in which you'll hear us talk about Bruno Mars on this podcast. No, not really. I mean, actually, like we cover like pop stars all the time, and I just found it fascinating because this is not the topic today, and but it was like a link in one of the articles you sent in preparation for the show, and I was like, wait a minute, like we don't ever really mention him. We always like name drop other people when we're trying to think of like a big star, but yeah, I mean, kind of like just like it's kind of wild, like no album for 9 years, and yet just like stacking bread.
And like not ever definitive, right? It was never the Bruno Mars kind of era, right. The way a lot of he's just around in the background, losing money gambling,
collect some Grammys here and there, like on the radio when you're when you're in the Uber, it's like he's just there, he's always there, yeah. Okay, well, moving on from Bruno Mars, I do want to know, do you think
to either happier or less happy?
Do you think that on any of his albums he has players who are playing Shenkwei guitars at all? Because those are becoming the most popular. Do you not know about this?
No, I don't know about
this. It turns out that we're talking Tariffs, and it turns out that Trump guitars, the line endorsed by President Trump. Yes, a line of electric guitars called Trump guitars are actually, strangely, being manufactured by Shenkwei Guitars in Zhenghan County, which is in China. So those costs of Trump guitars are going up.
Tragic.
But, okay, it did make me think a little bit about this. I was like, it makes sense. I mean, like Trump, of course Trump has a guitar. It makes sense. I mean, I was trying to think of what other commodities would go well with presidents, and I was thinking, like, I feel like Biden probably should have had the guitar. That's a little weird.
Sunglasses.
I feel like he's more of a...
He should have had signature
and then, like,
glasses.
Obama, you got like a pack of cigarettes in his name.
You can't
Bush,
mix
you got
Obama cigarettes.
You got like a you got like a prepackaged like paint brushes and with acrylics. Clinton, obviously the saxophone. I mean, we could go on, but we'll stop. But we'll actually get into the topic here, which is and by the way, Gibson did send Shenkwei Guitars that a cease and desist, because basically they're basically just ripping off Gibson's, which all right, they're more entitled to. Okay, right on. But so we're talking tariffs, but obviously we're talking tariffs in regards to the music industry, and like what will the impact be, or what is the predicted impact of tariffs on the music industry. But before we get into that, I keep saying we're gonna do it. We have to.
This is like a box inside a box inside a box, yes. Saxon.
Not to reference Russia, which are the Russian dolls, because that's canceled. But but we have to brag a little bit before we get into the tariffs. But it's related. It's a related brag.
It is, right? True. We are once again. Yeah, we were right.
Do you want to take?
Thank you.
I think you got to take this one. Yes, we were right. And what were we right about, Sam?
Okay, so about 3 months ago, we did an episode about AI and Trump, and like how AI would change in the era of Trump. And like one of the big conclusions we had was that we thought that the kind of access that tech would have on the administration and the kind of like incipient decline of any like non-bribery related regulatory framework would probably enable these massively valued companies to throw their weight around and deal with one of the major kind of threats to their status as like the preeminent new set of companies like in the world in some ways, and that's the fact that they just stole everyone's IP, especially the music industry. Just absolutely
yours, mine, music industry, everyone's.
Yeah, just stole it. And what we kind of said was that like at one level we think that this is like maybe the best thing that could happen for these companies, but that at the same time, the very kind of lack of constraints that would allow them to triumph could also potentially, in a almost like delightfully Hegelian way, undermine them. There could be an internal contradiction in the relationship between tech and Trump that could result in a far less certain future for them. And one of the things that we said was like, there could be an international crisis, there could be a recession, there could actually be the real tariffs. And like
Turns
in taking that seriously, baby, unlike all of like hire us Michael Bloomberg, unlike all of your high paid fancy schmancy analysts, we took this seriously because we did like a kind of old school ideological analysis, and we're like, yeah, he really believes it. And we were right. And so, there's been massive shocks to AI, not just DeepSeek, which was, I think, the topic du jour of that episode, but clearly the potential implications of a disruption of the supply chain of chips, of the kind of the fab supply chain, but also just like the increased stock market uncertainty beginning to potentially really clamp down on these companies that, while they are making all kinds of advances, are also all spinning for their lives and burning money and, need to keep getting large-scale funding in order to do this. And so that it does, I would say, that the future of AI, and therefore potentially the relationship between AI and the music industry, the hand of that half of the tech sector, is looking a lot more shaky than it was when we recorded that episode. Everything that we scried, we looked deep into our crystal ball, and we're correct. 1 gold star to Money for Nothing.
Please contact us at moneyfornothingpodcast@gmail if you would like to purchase a 1-hour session with us for a no. Just kidding. Yeah.
Why? We're not kidding. We'll do that. We'll do. We shill.
No such thing as a sellout these days. Not in this economy. In this economy,
no, we're self-starters, baby.
Right, and so
slowly starting.
So to put it simply, the tariffs are kind of a major factor of this instability.
Yeah, you betcha.
Yeah. And so obviously we don't need to spell it out, but just to be clear, like obviously like tech companies get material, workers, etc. from other countries across the sea, mainly China. And with these tariffs, it's something,
and mainly Taiwan too.
Mainly Taiwan, right? Of course. And with all of some of these tariffs and international crisis and everything, suddenly it's going to become a lot more expensive to operate. And that's particularly a problem when we have a seemingly possible growing recession starting to happen right now, and inflation and things like that. So, is it fair to say there's a sense of a possible recession happening?
Yeah.
Yeah, should I just?
No, I mean, look, it does seem like
I mean, if
we said
anything,
this.
inflation making everything all that much more expensive than it already was under the previous administration.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a couple things here, right? Like one is that we are sort of due for a garden variety recession. It's something that like weirdly has been off for so long that like we don't remember it. Like I remember 2008, which was not a normal recession. A normal recession was like 2000 or 1990. A perfect example is like 91, right? 91 was a pretty big recession. It arguably lost Papa Bush the presidency, right? But like a year later, the economy, or at least large sectors of it, had more or less recovered. The stock market was back. Unemployment was more or less back, right? Like a traditional, the traditional way the economy has gone has been there was a recession, a medium recession, like once every 5 to 10 years. And that was true. I mean, there's a recession, you can count from the Great Depression, that's like the 30s, and then there's a tiny little blip in like 51, I think, and then there's a little blip at the end of the 50s, and then there's a little blip at the beginning of the 60s, and then there's a little blip in like 69, and then there's 73, and then there's 78, and then there's 81, and then there's 87.
Look at that historian reeling those off.
I mean, and I think I'm like missing I might like that might not, all of those might not be 100%.
Hey, now do
like,
stagflation, because that's just basically another word, so you don't say the R word.
Yeah, no. I mean, stagflation only really happened in the 70s, and it blew everyone's mind because they didn't think it could happen. And they're like, oh, none of our tools work.
As it turns out.
mean,
but the main point,
yeah,
the main point is that, yeah. So to put it succinctly, basically, the Trump administration's deregulatory, uninterest in anything regulatory approach obviously helps these tech companies. It's what they want to see. The Meta, the Googles, the Alphabet, whatever, anything Elon's a part of, it obviously is to their benefit. But then, of course, his economic approach with all these tariffs, and this is an ongoing story. By the time this drops, I mean, who knows? Maybe he will put another 90-day pause. Like, it seems to be all this posturing and confusion, but nonetheless, like, is not to their advantage. And now it seems as if there's growing inflation, and that some economists are worried about a possible recession.
Yeah,
which is
no,
not in their interest. So we are basically looking at this and thinking about it through the music industry, and obviously that, as we've said before, it can be a springboard into bigger discussions about society and politics and what's going on.
I think that's right. And I do think, though, that like the two, these tariffs are such, even if like there's a 90-day pause and things go back, right? These tariffs are a huge deal. Like, very difficult to overstate how big a deal these tariffs are. If only, even if they get rescinded, like, completely, like, I don't know, like, literally Jesus appears to Donald Trump and says, like, let the borders flow open, my son, and like right, and he like goes back and really goes back to becomes a fervent free trader. The fact that it is possible for a presidential election in the US to completely remake the political economy of a country like, I don't know, Vietnam, which has 100 million people in it, right? And without really thinking or focusing or like really caring that much, just be like, oh, all your factories are closed now. All the factories that you've built up over like a decade and a half as you've moved up the supply chain and also become kind of like partially a transshipping space for China, right? Like you can't build factories premised on the idea that you'll have this market if like something just happened and just be like, oops, no, actually you can't come in, right? So like so there's that part of it. And then there's the fact that this could totally cause a major recession in the United States, which would be a bigger deal in the short term than the tariffs will potentially, right? Like, but not necessarily in the long term. And I think that we're going to like kind of flip back and forth across those two parallel tracks, thinking about like both what the tariffs could mean now, what a recession could mean in the medium term, and then also like what the impact of these tariffs, whether or not they come off, will be on the American culture industries writ large.
And you're already beginning to see the music industry get hit a bit. Obviously, there's been the music stocks have taken a sharp downturn. iHeartMedia, which is I think like another good bellwether for major media companies and like music. Apparently, their stocks or their shares recently plummeted like 27% or something. There's also things you can look at as well, where obviously something we talked about actually last year, but you're beginning to see like a lot of bands canceling tours. Like
Yeah.
Santigold decided not to come to America. She canceled her entire American tour. I mean, Animal Collective is no longer going to the Europe or UK. I mean, these are not like huge names, but names that like as of a few years ago would gladly cross the Atlantic to go on tours, and now are deciding that it's just actually not even economically feasible. I think actually the guys from Animal Collective came out and said that it just the economic reality simply doesn't work for them. They actually probably lose money. So I mean, you're already beginning to see this. I mean, you're seeing there's like worries about it hitting vinyl sales, obviously, because of manufacturing and resources. And I mean, this is all obviously happening in the shadow of declining profit in the music industry as well, and declining, and also a decline in or like a stagnation in the profits from streaming as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's happening all kind of already and kind of in the background.
Yeah. So like maybe I think that that's a really good point, that this is already a system in flux and a music industry in flux, right?
Right.
Yeah. So like maybe it's worthwhile to like start thinking about this like kind of concentric rings, right? With all of that kind of floating in the background, like maybe thinking about like a couple of examples of like things that are very explicitly would likely result from these tariffs, and then kind of moving outwards to like what a recession could potentially mean, and then like what all of this to use a frankly an incorrect term, what all this mishigas, because it doesn't quite have the heft you need to describe this moment, but what all of this might mean more generally. So like if we're just thinking about the tariffs, like you're saying, there's an argument, and we've gone back and forth on this, about like whether it's better to talk about the music economy or music economies, if we're thinking in that like broader music economies way, this hits all over the place. Music instruments, right? Most musical instruments are going to go up. All music equipment's going to get more expensive under this kind of tariff regime.
Yeah, it's already like there's like a lot of worry. I mean, in the guitar industry right now, because
You need to buy
you
need to buy a pretty nice guitar. Like I've got a solid guitar that I really, really like, and it's a Mexican Strat. Like you can like the made in America instruments are really high quality. Like it's not just like Squires are made in Mexico or something. It's like Mexico makes really good guitars, and having like a 25% increase on that clearly makes a huge chunk of musical purchases. Not to mention the fact that guitar manufacturers make the vast majority of their money on super cheap instruments that people buy, and then like it's like the Easter Bunny economy, right? It's like people buy them, start them, decide they don't like them, and then I mean, an Easter Bunny is just really terrible. They'd like release them in the woods to die. But in this case, they just put them in basements, which I guess is safer, right? But that's where they make most of their money. They make really cheap Squires and then sell them, and then people buy them when they're 13 and then give it up when they're 14 because they never figured out how to make a bar chord. It hurts your finger. Get over it. Tough love here.
Right? And that wretched F chord in the first position.
That wretched F chord. Um, so that, not to mention like anyone trying to buy like effects pedals or DJ gear or all that stuff, right? Like your Yamaha, like Yamaha. Where do you think that comes from?
Yeah, or I mean, even if you're trying to make electronic music, I mean, we were talking about like earlier about, or there's also that discussion around kind of the disillusion of like the band and what a band is. The discussion you had on a previous episode.
Dude, 808s. 808s
Yeah,
are going to get so
so
much more expensive. Your rap songs aren't going to be able to afford 808s. They're going to have half as many kicks because the price per kick is going to skyrocket.
yeah, your rise and grind mentality of a music entrepreneur, bedroom artist is suddenly going to become all that much more expensive.
The flip side of this is, and this is, I think, a broader trend that we're going to think about, is that most people actually don't own Roland 808s. They have a Roland 808 plugin, and the music technology, right, is not probably going to be impacted by tariffs, or going to be impacted by tariffs differently. So there is that funny thing, right? Like non-physical things, non-physical goods like music aren't manufactured in the same way.
So what you're suggesting, also the kind of irony of it is that the sort of move to streaming and the move to sort of like these like software programs to be able to like produce and create music, which maybe some lament in other ways, the lament for like the physical record, or like even the CD or cassette, and the sort of maybe lament of like the sort of how expensive it is to actually have a band with like instruments now, and how like economically that just doesn't make sense for like a lot of people. Actually, in a weird way, is in a sense perhaps tariff recession proof to a certain extent.
To a certain extent, though, like, again, this is where you think about all the pieces together, the laptops you need to run on those. And this is, I think, one of the big questions about these tariffs. We just don't. I think that this is an unprecedented move. And the last time there were tariffs like this, things were simpler. And when I say things were simpler, I don't mean like the state of the world was simpler. I mean like physical items were way simpler. It was like there was a pen factory, right? Have you ever seen the supply chain map for an iPhone? Like, it's really
But have you
complicated.
seen the
And I think that
Chinese made AI satires of Americans making their own iPhone? Have you seen those videos? Because those are amazing, and and listeners, if you have not seen those, please go seek those out.
But I think that one of the things that's going to be interesting over the coming weeks and months as these start getting rolled out through the economy is like, we can play through this, right? Software, not more expensive, unless of course they're coding or coding on machines where in order to actually do that business, they have to buy laptops, in which case those are more expensive, right? The number of, like, no one knows how this is going to ramify out through the economy. I mean, I was listening to like Beloved Marketplace featuring
My boy Kai Rizdal?
Rizdal. Yeah, Beloved Kai Rizdal.
He regularly drops a dude in there. I love it.
Yeah,
Like
no,
the word dude,
God.
to be clear.
Is that like there are people they were talking about this and they're like, this is the as big a supply shock as COVID was, but COVID was temporary clearly, and this is maybe not. So I do think there's like this huge question mark on all these kind of things. One thing though,
I mean, also I think one thing to mention though is that like music is like not the target of these tariffs, and you're beginning to see that like Trump recently came out with something like 145% tariff on China, but actually it was specifically targeting, I think, like EV vehicles. And so I mean, like it, I don't think that there's a real.
unclear.
Oh, no, wait, what?
All of it. Like what?
Yeah, I mean it's
what
okay, but I know,
they're
but I
even
think
on.
I think I mean I do think it's interesting though that I mean there seems to be specific industries, and I mean obviously this is like me assuming things, but it does seem from reading the articles that there's specific industries in which like there's a desire to sort of increase the tariffs and create this sort of trade war and all this instability, and it seems to be around these things like microchips, electric vehicles, and so forth. but obviously we don't know. Like you said, it is confusing and kind of ongoing, and we'll see how it plays out. But I think that it's not any kind of great assumption to assume that, like, obviously music is collateral damage in this, really. And there is the possibility that maybe at some point we would see some sort of exception or whatever made for like certain music instruments or like certain parts of the music industry. I mean, I doubt that too as well. But like I do think that that's one thing to specifically maybe
The
know that this is kind of like collateral damage in a lot of ways.
In certain ways, I think. Not
Yeah.
in the way as like they want high-end electronics to be made in America, in which case that's what makes music. Similarly, I mean, I think that one of the clearest things is, we've talked about this a lot, this is kind of one of the standard stories, is that as revenue from recorded music sales either went down or was more centralized, we kind of tend to look at it as the latter. Merch sales have become increasingly important. And I mean, that's one thing that like people like t-shirts are gonna 145% tariff or low hundreds means that your t-shirt just doubled in price.
Which was already going for 40 the last time I checked. Last time I was at a show.
For a merch t-shirt? Yeah.
For like a Black Eyes
like
t-shirt, which is like a kind of like unknown Discord band that had like a blip and recently played Pioneer Works and got back together and like to like 150 people. And listen, it was great, but like their shirt was $40. I can't even imagine if you went to like a major concert.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, again, most of that is not value from the shirt, right? Like most of the price. That's why you can get a $10 Rolling Stones t-shirt not at a Rolling Stones show and a $95 Rolling Stones t-shirt at the Rolling Stones show, right? But that's going to go through the whole supply chain, and mean that shirts either need to go up in price or people selling them need to take a hit. And I think that will happen at different price points. I think that if you're already shelling out the bucks to see the Stones, like A, too bad you miss Charlie Watts, and B, the extra $10 for a t-shirt may not bother you, but I do wonder about that middle level, right? Like everyone, Bangor, where I live now, has like a pretty solid outdoor arena, and like Luke Combs comes every year, and it's like Luke Combs tickets go for like $65 for lawn seats. And I do wonder about like a $40 versus a $60 Luke Combs t-shirt, at that middle level.
Yeah, and I mean, and the tariffs are basically across the board. I mean, like I guess like shirts are oftentimes now made in like the Philippines and Bangladesh. I think oftentimes if I check the tag, and I mean both of them, like Bangladesh has like a 37% tariff, which is insane, and then Philippines like 17% and stuff. So I mean, obviously, like all of it's just going to go up. And remember, this is all like in the middle of already like inflation under Biden that we had like last year. So I mean, it's just it's not. It doesn't look good for the music industry.
Well, another thing talking about Bangor is tourism, right? Though we're pretty far north up here, and there are, for the big shows, a lot of Canadians come down. I don't think a single Canadian is going to come this summer. I really don't. People are pissed. Like music tourism, there's a lot of internal to North America and global music tourism, right? And major hubs of this like multifaceted music industry. Nashville, New York City. I mean, I really do think to a lesser extent, but really like Bangor, Maine, like a lot of even some Canadians will come, but I think a lot of people are unwilling to spend money in a place that is threatening to invade them.
Fair.
Like you've got Quebecois people flying the Canadian flag. That's like insane.
Yeah, I mean, then also just like as I said earlier in the show, like I mean, you basically have bands that are willing to actually travel as well for economic reasons. So I mean, yeah, all kinds of music tourism going both ways is definitely going to take a hit.
Which is like, again, if we think about music as not just selling commodified sounds, but this broader set of activities, all of which, like in an ideal world, create a healthy music ecosystem, right? Like you've got Happy Nashville, and that includes both like the major bars along the strip, but also like kind of like hipper bars, and then you've got this broader music industry that circle around that, and it produces like live income that allows singer songwriters to go and figure, and on and on and on and all these different places, and like all of that together makes a functional music ecosystem, and hitting chunks of it ends up impacting other parts in ways that we don't necessarily, it becomes very hard to play out, but doesn't like is bad for everyone.
Also, talking about touring and talking and thinking about merch, like obviously that's also a major revenue stream for a lot of like touring artists. And so when that becomes more expensive, it becomes even more difficult for these artists that are already, basically not relying on any kind of like like any kind of streaming revenue, as we've covered ad nauseum here. But now, like, I'm really focusing more on physical sales and then also like live touring, and now that's going to take a hit. And then you also have like venues who like take a percentage of the merch sales as well, and so like that's already taking a cut out of the money they're possibly making. I mean, yeah, it's definitely not
So
good.
building on that, building on all that not goodness, um, I think let's take a step out in the circle and think. And here we don't know what's going to happen. I think that it seems unlikely that there. I mean, look, it's totally possible. It's totally possible that Trump this weekend cuts a deal with the EU via the president of Italy, who's visiting right now. There's a deal with Japan. The stock market, which so desperately wants the money spigot to keep flowing, gets irrationally exuberant. The stocks go back up, everyone chills out, and it's like another 2.5 years until eventually we have a recession, because like eventually you have to have a recession. Like you can't just have steady growth always forever. That's not how capitalism works. So look, it's possible. But let's, for sake of argument, say there starts being a recession of medium levels of seriousness with significant, like, real bear market stuff in the next 6 months, right? What does that look like for the music industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it's everything we just said, and then it's on top of it. It's like you're gonna see like less people going to shows. You're gonna see like canceled tours. You're gonna see, I mean, um, obviously you can see canceled subscriptions and streaming when people start, because of people are gonna start to like tighten their budget. People are gonna see like increased like merch, vinyl sales are gonna skyrocket. I mean, whatever remaining local vinyl record stores that are independent, obviously they're gonna get hit hard, and maybe even could see them close. I mean, maybe even smaller venues as well. I mean, like it could be,
Less
obviously, as you said,
advertising.
also less advertising, less, yeah, obviously, I mean, this wouldn't you wouldn't be able to see like so immediately, but obviously you're gonna see like less maybe instruments being bought as well, which then I don't know like what that
Further
what the
pushes.
long term effect of that is. I mean,
And some of the big guitar companies aren't doing great already.
yeah, they're doing great already. Yeah, you sent me this article about how like yeah, a lot of them are trying, along with I'm sure a lot of other major C-suite execs are petitioning to Trump to like make exceptions, for them. Yeah, it's pretty bleak. I mean, and like I mean, in true money for nothing fashion, I mean, I really don't see. I mean, there's a real, but like, what's the big picture here? I mean, there seems to be like a real reorientation of the global economy that is happening, that's affecting this, and like I am curious about also like the role of like this sort of neoliberalism, because it does seem like there is like a movement away from this like
Hmm.
era of neoliberalism, which we basically like spent almost our entire lives in. And obviously, as we said, we don't really know what the end result is or what it's going to look like. But I mean, this does seem to be the growing pains of a sort of a movement away from that. And I don't think it's going to fall right back into any kind of like specific like like local manufacturing, like people, I mean, like as I mentioned, this sort of AI video, this sort of satirical AI video, I think that's going to happen. I don't think you're going to see like suddenly like uh cell phone manufacturing farms in the Midwest popping up. But with that, but yeah, there's something else going on here too, where there seems to be like a real sort of like reorientation. Like Europe is
Yeah.
shifting to being like more self, I mean, we'll see, but like what, it's trying to move, and some, who knows if they'll be able to being more self-sufficient. Uh, there's like, tariff wars happening. I mean, what's that? That seems to be also what's happening here. And obviously, like as I said earlier, like obviously music's kind of the collateral damage of it as well.
Yeah, no. I think that's totally right. I mean, I think there's like a lot of things, and as to the way you've started framing this, I mean, I think this is all happening on top of a music industry that was already undergoing major changes, right? Streaming, and this is one of the headlines, like streaming is slowing down, streaming growth, partially because like everyone's streaming in the core markets, basically, right? Um, and so there has been this shift that we've been, or attempted shift that we've been talking about towards like premium streaming. People call it like the superfan economy. Like, we've talked a couple last year. Last year we had a couple episodes about K-pop where like we're talking about the ways that K-pop has commodified fandom as like an example, as exemplar for the rest of the music industry of like how this can all work. And this, I feel like, does drop a like a huge disruptive like barrier to all of these like carefully laid Lucian Grange plans, right? I think a huge determinant factor there is going to be what kind of recession we have.
Right.
One of the like the very dispiriting, and talking about neoliberalism, right? One of the very dispiriting elements of our contemporary American society is that like for a really long time, we've talked about this a lot, about like both the democratic and like deeply coercive elements of like true mass culture, but that was pitched at this, mass American market, and that in recent years, actually like the upper elements of the American consumer base have started being the primary drivers of consumer spending because they just have a lot more money. The classic version is like people redoing their kitchens. That's a huge consumer purchase. It's like a $15,000 to $25,000.
Probably, yeah.
And so just like if we're thinking about if streaming, which is sort of this like everyone's on a $10.99 or $11.99 or $12.99 a month plan, is slowing down, like where can you get growth? It's like the high end of concert tickets, high end experiences where it's all profit margin. And like certain kinds of recessions hit that really hard. Like a major stock market recession hits the people who have that kind of disposable income to begin with really hard. They eventually hits everyone else, clearly. But there's also versions where like it doesn't, the stock market, it like life gets bad for most people, but like the 10% of Americans who have money in the stock market are just watching their accounts go up and up and up and up and up. This is like the 2009 to 2012 story. In which case like at least segments of the recorded music industry could be just fine. That's like all kind of local, but I think you were asking more about this like broader move away from neoliberalism, maybe move away from free trade, maybe, and just like what this new landscape is. And that's like really tough to get at, because this is where you get like the political part of political economy comes in, right? This isn't just capitalism. It's like capitalism, or rather, this is not capitalism as defined by dollars and cents and profit and loss. This is also capitalism as defined by like shifting ideologies and power blocks and the way they justify themselves. And I think that the U.S. music, the U.S. culture industries and the U.S. music industry have benefited enormously from, despite everything this country has done, general goodwill towards American identity and American culture, right? We've, for better or for worse, been the dominant set of culture industries at the global scale. There are local culture industries that like go toe to toe with American culture in specific sectors, right? Bollywood in like the broader consumers that places that consume Bollywood, China's domestic market, like, right? And they're clearly like domestic, but like overall, the appeal of American culture and American music and its ability to continue driving global trends has not been challenged in any substantive way since like 1918. It's been
Yeah, and I
over a
think
century, and I just don't know to what extent the political ramifications of these tariffs, what they start doing to that.
yeah, but it's interesting because I think you're right there. I think that like probably when we ask like what's coming after this sort of era of neoliberalism, I mean I think it's exactly that. I think it's like this superpower competition that's driving the politics, and then will of course be how the political economy is transformed. They talk about that sort of that goodwill, and that goodwill is like gone, and now it's this weird like competition between superpowers, and then like everything is like kind of like I feel like downstream from that in a sense. And it's all happening at the end of this sort of situation where it's like basically this era of neoliberalism, which is kind of like robbed young people of like a future. I mean, and it's just like I don't know, not to be like even more gloom and doom and more depressing, but just with like the massive amount of cost of everything, and then like this is just causing like more cost. It's just like how can you be a young person who wants to be creative and like make art in any kind in this situation? I mean, when like literally like the pen you buy if you just want to be a fucking writer might cost like twice of what it costs now. And it's all seems to be the sort of like I said, this like just the like result
Yeah.
of this new, I guess, strain growing period where and like we said, we don't know how long it will last. Maybe Trump will have his come to neoliberalism to free trade policy Jesus moment or whatever, but
But
I don't think so.
even
But like
I
the
do
and
think though that I'm like I think neoliberalism is a useful framework, but I think it's a useful framework for analyzing stuff, but I tend to use a kind of like limited neoliberalism, if you will. I think it can get messy when like everything is ascribed. There's neoliberal identity. There's neoliberal politics of the self. There's right.
sure,
And it
sure,
can
but I mean
get
we're
like
talking about like
this
economic
huge.
policies that are happening right now, which is basically like we're
No,
like suddenly like there's like huge tariffs being put on like free trade.
no, totally. But I guess what
Yeah.
I think that's interesting about this is that even this is like these tariffs are breaking things at a level beyond just like the New Deal state to neoliberalism, right? Like even in previous examples of like previous systems of global finance and global trade that the US has engaged in, this sort of like explicit antagonism and the sense of the abandonment of even the like deeply hypocritical stance that like we're the good guys, right? Like I don't think America has usually been the good guys, but like it often has not. But like there's a huge difference between at pretending to be the good guys sometimes and just being like we want what we can get. And I do think that like music's actually a really interesting example to think about the long-term implications of this, Trump loves pro wrestling. This heel turn, which is what we're doing, right? We're doing a full heel turn. What that does in ways that can be really hard to characterize, but really, really like meaningful and deeply impactful in the long term, right? Like the American music industry, I mean, the American creative industries have made a lot of money for Americans, right? But I would go with a couple of exceptions of like Hollywood in the 40s and 50s maybe. I would say that in terms of like their overall value add to the American economy, it's been like we produced Michael Jackson. You love Michael Jackson. You can be so mad at this country, but like you still love Michael Jackson. Everyone loves Michael Jackson, Or take your pick of bands or artists or forms. Like everyone in the whole world is making trap music, and they all know where that came from, right? And I do think that that soft power has been a huge element that's buoyed the American economy and like all Americans, right? Like that's been a beneficial element that I do wonder if like, if you get into real beggar thy neighbor stuff, if it does feel like, it wouldn't surprise me if, you were saying like no one's that nationalistic. No one, when we were talking about like Canadians coming to Bangor or not, right? Bangor, Maine.
Not Bangalore.
Not any of the other Bangors in the country, of which there are several. Um, I would like kind of maybe rebut you and say like no one was that nationalistic, right? There have been times when people attempted to be that nationalistic in relationship to American culture, and there could be times of that again. It wouldn't surprise me if like if you got a backlash to American cultural exports in a lot of places, especially if this starts feeling like the US just isn't an ally anymore. It isn't a friend anymore. And I do wonder about like what the long-term implications of that for the music industry are.
I mean, also just basically if you also don't provide like the economic ability to create trap music. Not that it needed like a lot of money, but I'm just saying also just that.
I think
like
there's a fair bit of a black market innovation,
sure, but
activity in the creation of trap music.
Right. But the thing is, I'm just saying like if of course,
tariff free, baby.
Yeah, of course. But I'm saying like also like the economy and everything. I mean, like there is also that situation, like just allowing for a certain amount of creativity to just even like happen and flourish. But going back to what you were saying earlier, like I mean, I completely agree, and I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean that once again will be also what's part of this sort of shift, which we don't know where it's going or what will come of it, but that's definitely I think a part of it. And I think actually maybe this is like a bit of a blunt comparison, but I think that I don't know how many people of our listeners actually know about this, but so in Ukraine, there's like obviously all these twist on American exports. So there's, Real Housewives type stuff, and that's all still being recorded, and in the midst of like this war, it's still happening. Like new episodes are being recorded and everything. But there's been a shift where now, like basically, no one speaks Russian, and that's kind of like a thing. I mean, New York, maybe you've met some Ukrainians. Like there's kind of a refusal to like speak Russian, and I think along with that, there's kind of a refusal to sort of engage with like any kind of Russian culture that is like coming out of the state of Russia, and that might be like bands or comedians or writers or whoever, which maybe are not aligned with Putin, but just out of this sort of cultural protest of like what's happening, maybe a little bit of like virtual signaling or whatever. But I mean, do what you can, right? And I think that maybe that's kind of an example of something you might be able to see where if our economic policies and our political global policies are negatively impacting daily life in other countries, then why, regardless of like how much Kendrick or whatever like hates or dislikes the current administration, whoever it may be at the time, like if it's negatively impacting them, then maybe there's like less of an incentive and a desire to like see those movies or listen to that music, regardless of the political stance of like the media that they're consuming.
I mean, this is also like a wild comparison, but you know what never recovered, Saxon? The German film industry from World War II. It was dominant. It was like the biggest film industry in Europe. It was a real competitor to Hollywood.
But don't you think that some of that had to do with also the economic situation, like post World War II?
Yeah, and the fact that everything was destroyed. Also the fact that like all the artists fled. But like, right? If you think about like Weimar culture, those weren't only Germans. Those are people from all over Europe who moved to Berlin and make it a hotbed of creativity.
No, completely. I mean, you're completely right. And I mean, I think that's, also what you might see with more draconian policies and quality of life, increasingly declining in the United States. You might see like a creative and brain drain of people fleeing elsewhere.
And if we think about, U.S. culture, also like you can have like native-born citizens fleeing, but you could also like if I was a edgy, brilliant artist who didn't have not even a green card, right? Like, who wasn't a citizen, I would think twice about coming here because ICE could show up at my house and deport me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
I could be in the process of being naturalized. And I
Yeah.
could go to the naturalization ceremony, and the pen hasn't hit the paper yet, but I'm there. I've done everything. I've got a green card, and because I, produce a piece of art they don't like, that has a massive hit on also the vitality of the American culture industries, which have always been profoundly international.
Right. I mean, you're always sort of seeing this decline when it comes to maybe like film as well, where like, in like an increasing period of economic instability and like declining profits with like streaming and everything, like what are you getting? Well, you're getting Hollywood not taking risk, and you're getting them like like going for the sure thing, which is Marvel or remakes, right? And so I mean, like it's just like it's like this almost like there's all these different angles in which you can get into an entry point that all kind of result in the same place, which is kind of like the decline of like I don't know American cultural hegemony across the globe, right? Like, which is like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's where we're concluding this episode.
I mean, yeah, there's one last little dollop. One last little hope. It's not even hopeful. Jeez, it's grim, guys. It's not good.
I got it. Wait, I got it.
I mean, I have.
I got it. It's Fassbinder, right? Because I mean, like that's the one thing that came out of both. That was Fassbinder and Herzog, So at least we'll get something like that, right?
Oh, good. Like the tin drum for everybody. Like, no. I mean, the one thing I am really interested in, from like just like a straight observer of the music industry's finance, is there's a line that the folks over at Hypnosis, remember them? At Hypnosis said, good old Mercuriadis was like, music is a counter-cyclical asset. And I think one of the things that's really interesting here is whether we're about to potentially really test that in a very real way, right? It's an open question. People are clearly going to cut down on their subscriptions because you don't actually need Hulu and Netflix and Amazon and. But most people, unlike all of their TV streaming services, actually all of the music is on one streaming service. So I would actually be surprised if there's a huge shift in Spotify subscriptions. Or really a huge shift.
Oh, I'm so happy that this is our conclusion. Our conclusion is that Spotify will be okay.
No,
and Daniel Egg.
No. It's
okay.
not. It's not. Don't worry. Fear not, fair maiden. As we know, Spotify does not get most of the money from the Spotify subscriptions.
That's true. Yeah.
Right? Most of that is paid out to rights holders. And so I think that the music industry will potentially do pretty well. Like a lot of things are going to get buffeted, but the music industry is only going to get Jimmy buffeted. Sorry, that was really.
And on that note,
no. So I did some just like really simple analysis. Right now, UMG, a share in UMG is like $17 or $18. A share in Spotify is like $527.
That's so okay. Whatever. I don't understand. Yeah. Okay.
Spotify has a total income, like all the money it pulls in, of $15.6 billion. UMG takes in $11.8 billion as of 2024. 2023, 2024. Spotify makes $1 billion in profit or income. UMG makes $2.09 billion. Spotify has a profit margin of 7.3%. UMG has a profit margin of 18%. Spotify's price and a whole segment of these tech companies' price is based on the idea of constant eternal stock market price growth and an endless potential of scalability.
Yeah.
And one of the really interesting things we're going to see in the music industry in this moment, as we're kind of hitting streaming 2.0, whatever that is, as all of these relationships are being renegotiated, is music really countercyclical? If it is, it's going to look really good because it's going to continue chugging along and making some money while other places are like losing lots of money. And at the same time, the question is this a big enough exogenous shock to actually disrupt the kind of like valuation, basically the asset inflation, but the asset stocks, the stock asset inflation, that is like the primary way that Spotify makes anyone money, right? Spotify doesn't need to make you money by like making profit. Spotify makes people money and makes them keep investing in Spotify by making them money via their stock price, which is like
potential, based off of like potential, basically.
Well, no, but like it's detached from that even. It makes the money based on the fact that their stock keeps going up. It went from $70 a share in 2023 to $500 a share. That's a huge increase. And so as long as everyone's like, oh, it's a kind of stock that keeps increasing, like, yeah, like maybe potential is like, but it's like a derivatives, right? It's like a promise based on a promise based on a promise based on a vibe. So one of the things that'll be interesting to see is like, does, all these kind of things, potential increased regulatory oversight from Europeans who are pissed off and try to do anything they can to like hit back at the U.S. economy, or decoupling, or, any of these things that potentially really continue to roil the tech stocks. Like if Spotify's stock price drops, like where does that leave the music industry? Especially like these companies or, that are more interested in selling records than selling stocks. And that might not be the worst thing, ?
Yeah, because we finally get to get that UMG streaming service that we all wanted.
Yeah. What would it be called?
What would it be called? It'd be called like
Lucian,
like Lucian, but like without any of the vowels.
It's just gonna be called Universal Music.
Yeah, really. Yeah, right.
One last thing on the
or we finally get we finally get the Deezer, the rise of Deezer.
Yo, the Deezer come from behind wins.
Let's go.
One last thing, Saxon. I don't know if you've seen all these articles circulating about like recession pop.
Yes.
We need recession pop. Everyone needs recession pop.
What the fuck?
It's
Okay, what the
back.
fuck is? Okay, give us an example of like prior recession pop. Is that what like?
Well, so I did a little bit of thinking, just because I
See
saw
what AI
this argument
says.
and I was like, this is stupid. I was like, this is a dumb argument because I do not think actually the reason that all the songs from like 2008 to 2010 sounded like that was because of the recession. I think it's because really cheap plugins like hit a sweet spot of like sounding awesome. And then they got too complicated again. But
Oh
like
my
a
god!
G6,
Yeah. So this is So just wait. You didn't give the explanation though. The explanation, which actually has like a fucking Wikipedia, is that during the financial crisis of 2007 to 2009, there was a bunch of like feel good pop music characterized by like it was like fast, high energy, catchy melodies, lyrics, and apparently that was in response to trying to distract from the economic recession. Like,
So that's what I thought, Saxon. And then I did some very quick back of the napkin calculations.
oh, okay,
1890s are a tough decade.
okay. End of episode. No, just kidding.
1890s are a tough decade. And what do Americans need to cheer them up?
Baseball.
Incredibly racist ragtime.
Oh god.
Yep. We're talking about...
But here's my thing about recession pop. Isn't that so? If that is what recession pop is, I'm once again like every episode, not letting you talk about ragtime. But if that's what recession pop actually is, then like have we ever actually gotten out of recession pop?
1930s. 1930s is the height of swing bands. 1970s.
Isn't all entertainment like a distraction from
1970s, Saxon? Disco.
So when disco died, was the economy
Yeah.
got better, right? No.
Yeah.
What? No, it
Yeah,
didn't.
it did.
No.
Kind of. I mean, it like disco is the dominant sound of like the half decade when the economy's worse. And then then it gets a little hairy in the 80s and 90s. I was like 80s new wave question mark, like 81 to 83.
Listen,
And then like
the disco sucks like burning
Like-
Demolition Night. Disco Demolition Night was in 79. No way was the economy getting better in 79.
no, that's true. That's the second oil shock. But that just disco demolition.
Your
the
political theory
the
is
no, but disco
wrong.
demolition night that suggests that disco was so big that it had to have a homophobic backlash. I'm just saying, when the economy was good. When the economy was good. Anytime motherfuckers are buying Joni Mitchell records,
So there's a Vietnam War going on.
they're listening to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. The
So
economy.
in conclusion, everything sucks.
In conclusion, everything sucks. And
Maybe we'll get LCD sound system 3.4.0.
here's the thing, though, and this is the depressing thing. Like, I don't think we've got it in us.
Yeah, because we're too busy working.
I know. I don't think we have it in us to make a new form of trashy, pleasurable, so smart it's so dumb it's smart pop culture. I don't know if we've got the juice right now.
All right. You heard it here first. Time to make trash pop.
Saxon's like, we're out of this episode. We're out. Thanks for sticking with us. Music by Bird Language will be back in 2 weeks.